Hi, my name is Travis Shingledecker, and I'm a director at Aperio Philanthropy. Aperio is a nonprofit consulting firm with a vision for a world in which everyone can thrive. We exist to unleash the power of communities to drive change by dramatically expanding resources for nonprofits. Day to day, we work alongside community leaders and fundraisers to develop simpler, faster, and smarter ways to generate the revenue for nonprofit missions. Our client services provide strategic advisory, hands-on support, and embedded fundraisers to organizations nationwide. We are excited to host a three-part series this summer, the Relationship-Based Fundraising Toolbox, where we are going back to the basics of relationship-based fundraising. Today's webinar will be the second part of this series and will focus on creating a donor engagement plan, building off our last session on organizing your donor lists. As questions come up, please submit them via the Q&A tool, and they will be addressed at the end of today's session. It is now my pleasure to kick it over to our facilitators, Kelly Bronig and Tony Koch.
Thank you, Travis. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second session of this summer series, where we will be focusing on creating a donor engagement plan. So summer is the season of organization for development teams. I think we all know that, we experience that. It's when we're stepping away from our busy day-to-day and preparing for the year ahead. At Aperio, we believe that your mission, your donors, and your team all have more potential, and we're here to make it simple for you all to realize that potential. As you'll hear today, we are very passionate about going beyond just great ideas. We know that the challenge is less often what to do, but rather how to get it done amongst all of the competing priorities that all of us are experiencing. Since our firm was created, we have been listening, learning, and distilling what really works into a clear roadmap that any nonprofit is able to follow. The building blocks of that roadmap are on this slide here: your people, having a clear business model, and of course, a culture of philanthropy. We work alongside organizations, large and small, and everything in between, to implement this roadmap and unlock new fundraising potential. My name is Kelly Bronig. I'm a senior director here at Aperio Philanthropy. My career has been focused on leading strategy in the development operations space for many nonprofit organizations. I am especially passionate about helping organizations level up their operations and implementing efficiencies to create a solid foundation for their development teams and to better serve their missions ultimately. I'm here today with my colleague, Tony Koch. Tony, I will kick it to you for a quick introduction.
Thanks, Kelly. My name is Tony Koch, and I'm a senior director here at Aperio. I've built a career in relationship management and fundraising for international nonprofit organizations of varying sizes and stages. And at Aperio, I specialize in helping smaller or newer organizations create a strong foundation for sustainable fundraising growth.
Thank you, Tony. So during the last session 2 weeks ago, we talked about how to organize and segment your donor list and the ways in which your database has more potential to support that process. Today, we are taking the next step in stitching all of that together. We're going to be talking about how to create your donor engagement plan. That is to create an efficient, effective way to consistently bring your organization's why to each of your donor segments. Together, we will walk through what a donor engagement plan is. We'll walk through how to create that donor engagement plan, and finally, how to use that newly created plan. Just a few quick housekeeping items for those who are just joining. As Travis mentioned at the beginning, this session is being recorded. It will be shared with you all as a follow-up, and we will have plenty of time after the presentation to facilitate a Q&A. So feel free to start dropping your questions into the Q&A tool, and we will address them at the end of this session. Thank you. So let's talk about what a donor engagement plan is and why it's crucial to work this plan throughout the year. So at Aperio, we use the word engagement rather than stewardship for two reasons. One, it reflects that we're talking about the full donor cycle, meaning both cultivation prior to a gift and then ultimately stewardship after that gift has been made and received by your organization. And then number two is that engagement stresses our belief that cultivation and stewardship serve donors best when they are interactive or genuinely engaging, rather than an organization simply talking at donors with nothing in return. So why are we creating a plan? Our definition of stewardship is the culture, practices, and processes that provide every donor a meaningful experience that grows their relationship, engagement, and finally giving over time. Notice the three pieces of that definition that I just shared. First, stewardship is something that we do. It's a combination of culture, practices, and processes that we build with intention. We're being thoughtful about this. Second, stewardship has a clear purpose to provide every single donor with a meaningful experience. And then third, stewardship's ROI is in the growth of our relationship with a donor, as well as their giving and engagement over time. So we want to consider defining some goals internally or from within your organization's perspective. An engagement plan combined with an organized list, which we discussed at the last session, ensures that no donor is falling through the cracks at all. Additionally, all donors are treated well, but not necessarily equally. And what we mean by that is that you are creating special opportunities for donors as they grow in their impact on your mission. And then finally, that everyone on the team knows and understands their part and is playing it. So engagement is simple, seamless. It's not a confusing hassle to get each mailing out. We want it to be as simple as possible. And for each cultivation event planned, there is a plan and process in place for those. Externally, and more importantly, the donor will be feeling all of the time that, first of all, their gifts are being used well and as they intended them to be. Their partnership with your organization is making a difference and they can see that difference. And then finally, they see a role for themselves in the future of your mission. You are engaging them so that they can see this impact directly. And I'll pass it over to Tony.
Thanks. So you've heard about why having a plan to engage your donors throughout the year is important. Now we're going to dig into how to create that plan. Before you get into the nitty-gritty of planning, let's take some time to get creative. Pull together your colleagues for a brainstorming session. And during this brainstorming session, set aside practical considerations. Don't think about what you did in the past or how, when, where, or with whom you would implement ideas in the future. Don't worry about how things will get operationalized. Simply use this as an opportunity to confirm everything that you're already doing or all the tools that you already have in your toolkit, and then generate potential new ideas. Make the most comprehensive list you can imagine by answering the following questions. What are all of the ways we can acknowledge and thank a donor for their giving? Meaning, what can I do to show gratitude immediately following a gift? What are all the ways we can recognize and celebrate their generosity? In other words, how can I continue to demonstrate that gratitude throughout the year? What are all the ways we can show them the impact of their gift? Meaning, how can I communicate that donors' gifts are being used as they intended? What are ways we can help them experience the mission firsthand? Or how can we bring our mission to life for donors? And lastly, what are all the ways we can connect them to our community and create a sense of belonging? In other words, what opportunities do we have for donors to engage with each other? Take good notes when you do this. These ideas will serve you for years to come. And once you have your list, then you can start thinking about what to do now and what you might be able to implement in the future. Start by brainstorming with colleagues. Consider convening a small cross-functional working group that includes fundraising, marketing and communications, programs, and leadership, and then discuss the opportunities you see. Ask your colleagues how investment in this area will help them achieve their objectives. So your marketing and communications colleagues may be excited to pursue new purposes and audiences for their content. Your program staff may look forward to elevating the voices of those they serve and securing more investment in priority programs. And leadership may appreciate a more strategic or streamlined approach to engaging them in donor relationships. Once you have this strong overall vision, as well as value add for all stakeholders, you'll be on your way to having a strong engagement plan. Next, get all of your ideas on paper. Even if you don't think you have the bandwidth to do something right away, write it down, since you never know when the time might be to expand your offerings. And then lastly, select a handful of experiences to add to your plan. It's really better to start with what you know you can do and add on as you bring on additional staff or outsource elements of your plan. Taking on what you know you can do effectively will help ensure your goals for developing the plan are met. So now it's time to create the plan. Your stewardship or engagement plan will have two pieces. The first piece is an acknowledgement and recognition plan, in which we map out what a donor should receive based on their gift size this year. The second piece is a donor experience plan, in which we add on more experiences based on a donor segment or potential for future growth. If you joined our last session, you'll know that Aperio believes in taking a capacity plus approach to segmentation, and this translates to the donor's experience. In this case, we're treating a donor based on how we want them to give or how we believe they can give, with the intention that that increased engagement will help them grow their giving over time. If you want more information on our donor segmentation, you can listen back to the first webinar from our summer sessions. We think about gift acknowledgement and tier or segment for experiences. We think about gift amount for acknowledgement and tier or segment for experiences, because when we work on acknowledgement and recognition, we're thinking of exclusivity, meaning we're reserving special touch points for our largest donors. And when we work on donor experiences, we're thinking of inclusivity, meaning we're bringing as many potential donors into the family as we can, while ensuring efficiency and high ROI on resource and time-intensive touch points. Your acknowledgement plan is your organization's comprehensive reaction to a gift. As you create a framework for acknowledgement, we recommend that you simplify your approach to tax letters so that you can get them out as quickly as possible. Lots of organizations spend time unnecessarily to personalize the tax letter when most donors don't read these and simply file them for their accountants. We recommend you provide the same tax acknowledgement to everyone regardless of their gift amount, and use other touch points to show your gratitude. Having an acknowledgement plan is an opportunity to go beyond the tax letter and layer on these additional touch points. Think about gift acknowledgement and recognition as intertwined and on a longer time frame than the weeks following a gift. What happens within 1 week, within 3 weeks, within 6 months, and a year of your receiving of a gift? As you create your plan, consider these ideas. Try to get your tax acknowledgement letter out within a week. Have a template that you use for everyone, mix it up every couple of months, make it short, warm, and inspiring. And then do an additional thank you touch point for your larger donors. Here's where your personalized letters, your handwritten notes, and phone calls come in. Think about not just what gets sent, but also who sends it. For example, a thank you call from the CEO or executive director could be reserved for top donors in addition to other touch points from a relationship manager. This could happen immediately following a gift or at another point throughout the year. And then do a mid-year thank you for your top donors. This is a great way to engage your board. Every month or so, give each one a stack of cards to sign or a list of donors to call. Make it easy and make it fun, and they'll definitely want to do it. Within a year of a gift, deliver any recognition touch points you promise to larger donors, such as naming opportunities, donor walls, names in an annual report, listings on your website, etc. And then to create what you see on this slide from your asset catalog, carry over all the ways you're thanking donors, meaning immediately following a gift, and then recognizing their gifts throughout the year. When you have your plan together, map it out into this acknowledgement plan like a benefits matrix. The giving levels across the top should be specific to your organization. At some organizations, a major gift might start at $5,000. At others, it's $25,000. So think about what a mid-level, a major gift, and a principal gift mean for you. You might also have a gift amount that automatically qualifies someone to be assigned to a relationship manager or placed in a portfolio. And you'll also notice that you want to assign a lead. This would be the person or the team responsible for making sure the touch point gets executed, not necessarily the person responsible for the execution. For example, with a handwritten note from the CEO, the lead would be the donor's relationship manager, and it would be their responsibility to work through appropriate channels to ensure that that note is written and sent. As you develop your engagement plan, remember, acknowledgement and recognition alone are not the full picture. To fully engage a donor and inspire ongoing, growing support, we need experiences. We need to bring the donor opportunities to see the impact of their giving, experience the mission firsthand, and connect with the community and feel a sense of belonging. A few things to keep in mind as you're doing this. So as we craft this part of the plan, we are thinking about your why and asking ourselves, how can we connect donors to that why? Donors don't necessarily give to what you do, they give to why you do it. So these opportunities for connection are really important. Not every donor will take you up on all of your offers, but it is important that they all receive the opportunity. Reserve the most time and resource intensive opportunities for your highest potential donors to ensure you will see a return on that investment. When we build out experiences, it's also helpful to think about ways you can personalize or customize things that you're doing for your general audience and make them special for donors giving at higher levels or with greater capacity. So to create the donor engagement plan, we're going to marry our catalog of assets that we created with donor segments. First, create the plan in a matrix similar to how you set up your acknowledgement and recognition plan and similar to how you see it here. However, this time, instead of current giving levels across the top, put your donor segments. You'll see here that we have 3 columns or tiers for portfolio donors. For a refresher on those tiers and how we segment, you can revisit the first webinar in this series. You'll also notice there is a column for who's responsible for creating the touch point, for example, a piece of collateral, and who's responsible for coordinating it or getting it to the donor. Again, when we work on acknowledgement and recognition, we're thinking of exclusivity, reserving those special touches for our largest donors. But when we work on donor experiences, we're thinking of inclusivity, bringing as many potential donors into the family as we can while ensuring efficiency and high ROI on those resource and time-intensive touch points. Now, Kelly is going to take us through some collective brainstorming.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, so like Tony said, we're going to do some brainstorming together. I just pinged a message to the chat and I'm going to call on you all to drop a few things into our chat together. So we're going to talk about our catalog of assets. I want you all to think about ways that you are thanking and recognizing gifts and ways that you are showing impact. Go ahead and start dropping specific ways that you're either currently thanking or wish you had the bandwidth to thank your donors when they are giving, and additionally ways that you're currently showing impact or ways you wish you were showing impact. So we can drop some of those into the chat. We really want this to be an inspirational exercise, even if there are things that you're not actively doing. So board phone calls, handwritten notes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, these are amazing.
Yeah, CEO making calls. Robot written something? Oh my goodness. Personalized thank you notes. Yeah.
Impact reports, gratitude cards. You're working on your impact report right now. That's great. I see a lot of leadership calls in there.
Monthly thank you letters, thank you notes.
Including photos in your reports. I love that.
Free
Merch.
merch. Everyone loves some swag.
Mm-hmm.
Lunch with leadership.
That's great. Yep. Personalized acknowledgements for
Videos.
monthly. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I love the thank you call out too. We're seeing that one more and more prevalent. I think those videos are really an awesome way to show that personalized gratitude for gifts.
Absolutely. And Breakfast of Champions, personal videos. These are amazing. So as we look at some of the ideas and everything that you all have dropped in here, thank you for sharing. We're looking at really a simple list, and these simple touch points make such impact. So we're looking at letters, notes, videos, gifts and swag. We saw, I think, one or two of those ones. Acknowledging these gifts in collateral, any communication that you are sending out either to your donor base or publicly and social media. And then on the other side, considering ways to show the impact of their gifts would be sharing quantitative updates at meetings, sending out regular impact reports. Looks like many of you are actively working on your impact reports. And of course, ensuring thoughtful storytelling and impacts are shared in regular donor communication channels. We're thinking emails, socials, and so on. Okay, so we're going to go through one more collaborative session here. So we're thinking about ways to bring your mission to life so that the donor understands and can see, and then ways to create community. So go ahead and drop in some ideas in the chat. How are you, or how do you wish you were bringing the mission of your organization to life? How are you helping supporters see the impact and letting them engage in a hands-on way? And additionally, what are ways that you all are creating a sense of community, whether it's in-person, virtual, donor volunteer nights? Love that. Tours.
Yeah.
Immersion trips, very cool.
Visitor days, coffees, community tours.
Coffee. You can see where I'm at in my day. Workshops. Oh, to visit at mobile food pantries.
Nice.
Zoom chats, simple. Look at us here. A lot of volunteering, a lot of tours of different kinds. Hand out food at a pantry. Yep, absolutely. Have them engage.
Yeah. Oh, I love that education piece.
These are great. These are amazing. Oh, a thank you celebration. That's fantastic. Live podcasts. Cool. Sharing videos. Amazing.
Yeah, I saw earlier someone saying show pricing our program graduates more. I love like really lifting up the stories of the people that your work impacts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. More swag for Hunger Action Month. Fantastic. These are so good. These track right along. I love to see everything that you all are dropping in here. So ultimately what we're seeing is ways that you're bringing your mission to life, volunteer opportunities, town halls, engaging in person, site visits, tours, parties, lots of coffee. Additionally, we are fostering community through events. We're wanting to make sure that we're considering the size and audience and invitations of those events, because each of those is a touch point, of course. As also a few of you were mentioning, ambassadors or small groups of people who are supremely dedicated to the mission of your organization. And we want to see those people be dedicated, energized individuals who are going to go on your behalf and engage with others in the community. And then online spaces. We saw Zoom, we saw socials. You can create a virtual space either through your current social media setup, your website, to allow supporters to connect with one another, with your mission being the forefront of those conversations. So thank you all for sharing with us. These are amazing notes. I know we're marking them down separately. Tony's now going to take us right into using your donor engagement plan and what all of this really looks like.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again, everyone. I hope you all can use some of those ideas that you all shared in the chat for your own asset catalogs as you hopefully build out your plan. So once your plan is built or on paper, let's talk about how to implement your donor engagement plan. Putting your donor engagement plan to use is all about creating that baseline experience so you know who gets what and when. Planning the work and working the plan is a bit of a mantra around here. One of my favorite things about this donor engagement plan is that it's both the plan and the mechanism to work it. So now it's time to operationalize your plan, meaning define who, what, when, and how everything will be done. And then roll the plan out to your team, ensuring everyone is very clear on roles and responsibilities. Do this by meeting regularly and with everyone involved in the creation and execution of relevant elements of the plan, and use this time to refresh your plan quarterly or as needed. One last element of the plan is a calendar, which we can use as a guide to keep a 30, 60, 90-day line of sight for all of our touch points. So this is what the calendar looks like. So it's time to convert your experience plan matrix into the calendar. This calendar gets shared among departments, and it includes all communications, events, and experiences, and then spells out who will receive them by month, making it a tool for operationalizing the plan. Here you can really see the value of segmentation. It's much easier to make plans by donor group rather than having to recreate your lists every time you have a new touch point to offer. The calendar provides a bird's eye view of who gets what and when, again, creating that baseline experience for all donors with the opportunity to layer on personal touch points for donors under management. I personally love the calendar view. It really helps you see where there are gaps in touch points over the course of a year. A donor is very unlikely to support you and your mission if they only hear from you October through December. This calendar really helps make sure you have a steady and relevant pace to your touch points and helps you see the story that you're telling to your donors over the course of the year. It also helps to ensure that your larger donors are truly receiving that elevated experience compared to your general donors. So this document as a whole becomes your plan. You can filter by type of touch point, month in which it happens, responsible party donor segment. This enables you to make sure no donor falls through the cracks and that you are layering on your time and task management processes with the donor engagement plan to make sure that all tasks are accounted for. To use the calendar as a tool for implementing the plan, again, gather everyone who's responsible for creating and coordinating elements of the plan together monthly to review what's planned for the next 3 months ahead. Make sure everything is on track. And if it's not, this provides a line of sight to course correct anything that might not be going to plan. We thought it would be helpful to share a case study. So this one comes from our friends at Arkansas Food Bank. We walked them through creating a donor engagement plan that mapped out their catalog of assets, acknowledgement plan, and donor experiences, just like we've showed you today. And one of our friends there said, as a relationship manager, I am now able to build out a yearly touchpoint plan for each of the donors in my portfolio. It has allowed me to be more creative and intentional with my touch points. The best news is last year, I was able to grow my major gift revenue by 25% year over year in a year where a lot of nonprofits were seeing decreases in revenue. We find that when organizations have a clear plan for donor engagement, it allows relationship managers to focus on one-to-one touch points, while donor relations staff handle everything that is one to few and one to many. It helps you work smarter, not harder, because it gives you a line of sight as to what's coming up. This allows you to leverage the energy that you put into mass market communications for major donors to help them deepen their engagement with your mission.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to move through a few key takeaways from our session, and then we're going to move into Q&A. We have a good subset of questions that you all have been dropping into the chat. Continue to add those in there. So a few final lessons here from our experience and discussion. A donor engagement plan is a tool that aligns, it streamlines and simplifies what we're working on. You have a big catalog of assets now, so you can always add in touch points, but really we're wanting you to start with what you can feasibly deliver and deliver it well. We're looking at acknowledgement and recognition plans based on gift size, and a donor experience plan based on future potential. Those are the two key pieces. And ultimately translating your plan into a calendar each year, review it monthly with your team and make sure we know what every single team member is accountable for and following up during those monthly calls. We want you to start simple so that you can end up over delivering. And it looks like we're going to move into some Q&A.
Great. So just looking through our Q&A, it looks like we have a couple of questions that are somewhat the same. So I'm going to mold them into one question. But what if I'm a smaller shop or a smaller team and don't have a large team to help create and execute all of these touch points?
Yeah, that's a great question, one that I get asked all the time. I would say start by focusing on what you are doing or can do for a mass audience, meaning maybe you can get out an update on gift impact quarterly, or maybe you can host a virtual town hall to update donors on exciting mission moments 1 or 2 times a year. So start by deciding what those things are, and then layer on personalized versions of those things for larger dollar donors. And then I'd also encourage you to think about who else you can get involved in this process. So even if you do have an all volunteer board, it's perfectly acceptable and even encouraged to engage them in participating, especially in the donor acknowledgement process, having them send thank you notes or make thank you calls on behalf of the organization is a great way to alleviate the burden from one person and one person alone. And as well as great to encourage that culture of collaboration around fundraising. And part of that is helping everyone know their role in supporting donor engagement. Kelly, anything you would add?
I think my mind is going to the tactical side of things here. When I think about creating and carrying out this plan, I would encourage you to start first by thinking of your donor list, which we discussed in the first session. You have the data, you have the donor names, the contact information. Use this as a starting point to make it feel more manageable. You can piece it out. You can walk through a simple mail merge. We can do that. You can create the letters for emails, acknowledgements, invites, whatever the intended purpose is as we're talking about your plan. Your CRM is there to make your job easier. And if you're operating with a lean team, I'd want to see you engaging with your CRM even more. Let's get some reminders set up so it can help you carry out the tasks and touch points that you need to be working on every single day.
Okay, going to the next question. I think this one is more so for Tony, but Kelly, if you have anything to add, feel free. The investment we make in someone is not always returned solely in the form of financial resources. Some people have great potential for meaningful partnership that cannot be measured in dollar amounts. Do you have any suggestions on how to better segment and strategize our time and investment based on the more holistic picture of someone's potential for contributing to the work, not just their money?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. So I still think that they would belong, like if that's a person who you really wanted to devote time to in a one-on-one relationship management, then they belong in your portfolio. So they should be assigned to tier 1, 2, or 3. As a very quick recap, we think about tiers. Tier 1, greatest potential to grow their giving. Tier 2, or maybe your existing loyal donors already giving at capacity, and maybe they're giving at capacity and their capacity is $100 or $500 a year, but they have all of this other potential. So maybe that's where they belong in a portfolio tier 2. And tier 3 is folks that you're still getting to know and understand their potential. So for me, I would think about the existing segments that we have to work with and just be more strategic about where you're placing donors like that, recognizing that everyone's value that they bring to the organization is not only financial or can go beyond the financial value of their contributions.
Okay, next one I have is for you, Kelly, as our DevOps guru here. So when is it useful to engage your CRM or your database in your engagement planning?
Okay. I think of your database being used in 3 ways, ultimately, when we're talking specifically about engagement planning. And that's going to be, we mentioned this before, tasks and actions, acknowledgements, and then communications. So when we think about your catalog of assets that we discussed, so for donor touch points, depending on the number of donors that you are working with at your organization, are we talking 50? Are we talking hundreds, thousands? You can utilize the import or export functionality to ensure that data is up to date in the CRM on any donor or prospect records. You want to make sure that it's active information that is regularly updated so that you and your team know exactly what's going on. Having these touch points ensures that you're held accountable with the timing of your actions as well. Did you send that email? Did you make that phone call? Was it within a timely, 5 business day time frame? You need to mark the task as completed in your database. And then from there, the importance is also that your metrics are up to date. The reports that are being run, how many touch points are coming into play? What is the return on the investment that we're seeing with gifts coming in versus touch points made? Regarding the acknowledgement side of things, I want you to ensure that each gift record is marked as acknowledged as soon as that acknowledgement goes out. So gift is made, 2 business days passed, they've received a tax receipt, you've also made that phone call, it's marked on the record. You're aware, so next time that you're engaging with this donor, or if somebody else on your team is, they're aware of every single communication that has happened back and forth with this donor. Finally, and this kind of ties into everything that I just mentioned, but when we think about the catalog of assets and communicating with your supporters at large, You're relying on your database to get you the information that you need in order to implement these communications. If you want to be sending invites or linking ambassadors together, bringing volunteers together, and so on, your data exports, your donor contact information, mail merges, all of that is going to be crucial for success in engaging with your supporters, and your CRM kind of lifts you up to do that.
And then another question that kind of piggybacks off of what you were just sharing, Kelly, about leveraging the list from your CRM, from your marketing platform is, and this one maybe could go to the two of you, is should I suppress my major donors from our communications if I'm providing them with all of these personal touch points?
I say the short answer to that question is no. But to elaborate, there will be some times when you don't want your major donors to receive all of your solicitations. So maybe you have like 4 emails planned for a Giving Tuesday campaign. Maybe it's appropriate for major donors to get 1, but more would be overkill or could distract from a larger end of year ask that you may have planned. So I'd say the important thing to keep in mind is that you don't want to suppress them generally and then count on one person or yourself to carry out all of the touch points to make sure they hear from you. Because what happens more often than not is that they end up hearing from you less than your general donors because you've taken on the full burden of keeping them updated on your mission by essentially unsubscribing them from your communications. So any donors who are subscribed to your communications, who are tiered or major donors in your portfolio, I would keep them on and then be selective about the solicitations that they receive throughout the year.
Great. So moving right along to our next question, and I think this one is likely for Tony as well. Is it appropriate for a lower level development staff member, for example, a coordinator, to send out personalized acknowledgement to small level donors, or is it best to keep automated recognition signed by the CDO?
Yeah, I think again, like there's an important role for everyone to play in donor acknowledgement. So I do think it would be appropriate for a coordinator to be responsible for those, especially if they're additional touch points, right? So maybe all of your tax letters are signed by your CEO or CDO. But I do think as a follow-up or a second acknowledgement that would be above and beyond that tax letter. It could come from anyone on the team for those smaller dollar value donors.
Agreed. And then maybe for Kelly, one too is, are donor engagement plans useful for organizations of all sizes? Piggybacking off from before of, the touch points for smaller organizations, is it even a useful tool depending on the size of the organization, whether it's really tiny or larger multi-affiliate?
Okay, great question. The answer is it depends. Donor engagement plans take resources to create, right? What we just talked through would require a lot of time, thought, and energy. And ultimately, we want to make sure that the ROI is worth all of that. So when we're thinking about very small shops, 1-person shops, there's 2 people without highly segmented data, it might not be the best use of time to create, implement, and manage a fully designed and developed donor engagement plan. That said, there are key pieces that you absolutely should be taking into consideration and actively working on that are going to be highly beneficial, no matter the size or stage of your organization. You can take what you want from this session, and if it makes sense for you all, implement it. But at a minimum, I would recommend having a basic acknowledgement framework and a calendar of touch points for your donors.
Next question being, I'm very interested in exploring peer-to-peer texting as a tactic to expand our reach and give donors a space to take part in relational organizing by organizing their networks. Do you see any value in this?
Yeah, I can answer, and Kelly, if you have thoughts, welcome them as well. I think, yeah, it's a great idea. I think that the texting, especially when it comes to peer-to-peer, could be a really easy tactical way. Most people we're seeing who participate in peer-to-peer fundraising do tend to be of a younger generation. So if you think you have the network or the potential network for those, and they typically tend to be smaller dollar gifts, to really leverage the potential of those gifts. But peer-to-peer could be an interesting way to test out that, especially through a texting mechanism. Typically, as you know, like peer-to-peer, you talk about creating custom campaign or links that are on your donation platform, and then those get emailed out. But if there's a way to do that via texting, I think it could be interesting to explore. I'm not sure we have any organizations that I can think of anyway that are currently doing that, where I'd have more anecdotal evidence or successes to point to. But Kelly, do you have any thoughts?
Unsurprisingly, my mind goes to the operational side of this. While I think it's absolutely worth your while, in advance of making this decision, I want to make sure you have somebody who is guiding the process operationally. What will this look like on the back end? How are you tracking this information to know that these donors have been reached out to? And just make sure that you have at least a simple plan to start from. It doesn't have to be complicated, but I want you to be able to track your metrics accurately. Was it worth the time?
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I'll add is last week we talked about like the real value of having this kind of reach in a space would be to bring those donors into the fold of your organization. So if you can somehow capture their contact information and then therefore bring them into the fold of engaging them in this way, meaning via an engagement plan, and really like leveraging that element of it, that's where you'll see the ROI. Otherwise, yeah, it might be something to think about in terms of like the long-term potential with each of these donors.
And I love the next question, especially as I'm sure a lot of folks are starting to think of, what their end of year is looking like, what that plan looks like. So when during the year should I be preparing a donor engagement plan?
Well, I think that any time is a good time to create your donor engagement plan. One of the reasons that we're doing these summer sessions now is because we know that summer is typically a time of planning and reflection ahead of a busy end of year or fall or holiday giving season for many nonprofits. So if you have a time of year that you already devote to calendaring and planning for either a specific season or an upcoming fiscal year, those are great times to put a plan in place. And if now is not that time of year for you, it's good to at least start brainstorming as a team. So doing that catalog of assets and getting some ideas on paper so that you can start figuring out how to execute them, maybe in the new calendar year once we're past that busy end of year season.
And then we'll go building off of your points earlier, Kelly, of how you operationalize this. I see a question in the meeting chat of, have you utilized Asana to help manage the calendar of touch points rather than another spreadsheet?
Great question. We're a big fan of Asana in general. And really what I think this comes down to is whatever platform you will actively use, that is the correct platform. So if you and your team are going to get into Asana and keep up with those tasks and to-dos, and additionally, when you're refreshing, put all of the new ones in there, I think that's great. I think it's okay. Let's use Asana. You can hold each other accountable. The chat function is really nice. You're able to leave notes. You can create subtasks, which is something that is a little bit more complex in Excel. I would say the Excel side is going to be a bit more simplified. What it comes down to is what you will actually use and activate is the correct system to go with.
And I'll just add that I love this question, because another thing that comes up when I do this work with organizations is like, well, how do I know if I'm sending an invitation to the event? Like, when do I have to get that invitation designed? Do I put that in the engagement plan? And the answer is no. The engagement calendar is truly about the donor experience and is not a task management tool for you all. Again, it's a way to operationalize your engagement plan, but you should definitely have a separate system, whether it's through something like Asana or Excel, to help manage the internal goings on of bringing the engagement plan to life.
And I should have said this at the beginning, but I just want to level set for those who might not be familiar with Asana. It's a project management software. There are many out there that are similar to this.
I see two more questions here. So I think I'm going to start with the more specific one and then the more zoomed out question afterwards. So maybe this one more directly for Kelly, but Tony, feel free to chime in of, should I be tracking acknowledgements even when they're not written or emailed?
Absolutely. We want to track every single interaction that is happening. So let's say that you've picked up the phone and called a donor. All of these actions need to be tracked on the donor record. You'll want to confirm that the donor has been acknowledged so that when you reference that gift in the future, you can see that there's no confusion in place. Or if somebody else on your team gets in there and says, oh my gosh, I don't see that they ever recognized this $50K gift, they really needed to acknowledge it, you've already acknowledged it. Additionally, there's a tax acknowledgement that is sent out as immediately as possible. That is separate from your quick phone call or thank you. But yes, if it's not written or it's in person or it's on the phone, we want to see that on the donor record.
Okay, and then going out to our more zoomed out question of how this tool again is really leveraged for creating community for our nonprofits. You mentioned ambassadors and online spaces as additional ways to create community beyond events. Do you have any examples of organizations who are doing this?
Yeah, a couple are coming to mind. I'd say Conservation Lands Foundation is one of our partners. They have a leadership circle of ambassadors who exist they're a combination of like influencers and people who are leaders in the conservation, land conservation space, and they exist to leverage their positions to garner interest for their mission and engage on a peer-to-peer basis. And then on the like online spaces front, I'd say Lime Connect. They have a whole online hub, which is part of like their core offering to their disability community organization. So their online hub exists to serve members of their network specifically, but also exists for others who can join as a friend of Lyme, which could include donors who might be interested in their mission or in learning more directly and interacting more directly with the community that they serve.
Okay, great. And then this one, I'm curious, like also could be a good crowdsourcing question, I think, building off of that creating community bit. We had a question that came in of, do you have any advice on platforms that can be used to bring a large group of people / friends together to start engaging them in your work, cultivating relationships with them as potential future donors? For example, a group of former school colleagues that would like to donate to your organization. So I'll open it up to Tony and Kelly if there are any platforms that come to mind for such convenings like this. And then also too, if anyone on the webinar has any platforms you'd recommend for the rest of the group, if you want to drop them in the chat as well.
I know Lyme Connect uses HiveBright to host their community platform and like really did a lot of customization to build it out so that they could create custom like affinity groups and other things like that. I'm not sure, Kelly, if you're aware of others.
I think what I hear more often than not are socials, but when I'm thinking about anything private, Salesforce has plugins or additional apps that can be added for peer-to-peer. There we go. Classy has an option for that. We would just have to look at what are the abilities for those supporters to communicate directly with each other. But there are options out there. Razor's Edge. Thanks, Gwen.
Great. Well, now that we're hitting our final 5-minute mark, I think we're going to pivot over to our quick wrap up and just do some, give some communications as to what comes next. And give you all a little bit of time before your 1 o'clock Zoom. So first, I just wanted to thank both of our facilitators, Kelly and Tony, today for leading today's conversation, and wanted to take a moment as well to thank all of you for taking time out of your day for joining us. As I mentioned in the chat, as follow-up, we'll be sharing a recording of today's webinar by the end of this week, and are happy to set up free 30-minute consultations to attendees to go over any questions that you might have, go over some of the templates that you saw today, and start plugging in for your specific organizations. And I also encourage you, if you didn't have a chance to go to our first webinar, you can go visit our website at aperiophilanthropy.com, and you'll be able to find the recording there of that session. So in the follow-up email as well that we'll be sending with all of these goodies, we'll be sharing as well the registration link for our upcoming event that's coming later this August. Encourage you all to register if you haven't had a chance to do so yet. So thank you so much yet again, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.